Hi everybody, it's Tracy from Design Your Reality. This is week 3 about let's talk about money. Week 1 we talked about cash flow. Week 2 we talked about saving and investing. And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, net worth. So why do I love net worth so much? Well, let me try to explain it to you. So for me personally, and my friends can attest to this, from the time I was like 20 years old and started to actually realize after university, you have the student debt, you have a few credit cards, you're starting to learn about credit, you're starting to learn about the real world and paying bills. And I wanted to really understand how money works. So fortunately for me, my uncle from Australia, he's a great rental property investor, and he would talk to me about money when I was younger and throughout the years. So fortunately, he shared with me some of his tips and tricks, and one of those was watching and paying attention to your net worth. So when you're 20, the net worth statement isn't that exciting. But as we get older, it becomes more and more important to make sure we understand it. And I really, really believe strongly that it's probably the number one thing to make sure that you're tracking on an annual basis. So literally in a spreadsheet, year over year, if you do nothing else after Christmas, maybe in that week when we're not so busy between Christmas and New Year's, always put it in your calendar to update your net worth. So why I loved it back then, it was a really, and I literally, if I had a Friday night to myself, I would pour a glass of wine, sit in my office and kind of play grown up and update my net worth. And by starting out even at the younger ages when there's not a lot to pay attention to, over time, as your assets get bigger, your liabilities get bigger, you start investing, you start owning more properties, it starts to become and really plays into what your retirement sort of plan and life will look like. So it is all really a part of how you design your life. And for me, it was just my happy place to update the net worth. So I'm hoping with some encouragement and some fun around money and the new love you found for it, that you too will love updating your net worth statement. So you ask, what the heck is the net worth statement? It's spun around a lot. We often get asked to update, that good old spreadsheet when you go for a mortgage, or you're going to be with your financial advisor, or usually it's a simple piece of paper and it looks really straightforward, and you kind of do it once, but it's not as in a single place. So that your assets minus your liabilities essentially equals your net worth. The way I like to think of it is if you were to sell everything today, so every piece of investment that you owned at market value, you paid off every piece of debt that you have, whether it be personal debt, credit cards, mortgages, that pot of money that you're left with, that is your net worth. So that's the number that over time you really want to see it growing. And it gets you to the bigger picture of your financial health versus just looking at, cash flow is one thing, savings and investings are the other thing. But when you put it all together, that gets you to what is your net worth. And it's a really empowering figure, because as markets are volatile and maybe your investments aren't, just going constantly up, and they do the little dipsy doodle over time, which should and is expected, especially right now as we're going through, unknowns and changes throughout the whole COVID experience. If you were to focus too much on just one aspect of your net worth statement, you would actually maybe be a little bit nervous. But when you have it in front of you and you see year over year over year, and you see that actual growth and the ebbs and flows with the overall increasing of your net worth over time, you really do get a sense of calm and peace, and you actually really see how your money's growing. It also over time becomes this really cool picture of your life. And I've got some tips and tricks which I'll be sharing at my workshop June the 9th. And hopefully give you guys the tools that you need to be able to see, your whole kind of story of your life unfold by really using some of the spreadsheet tips that I've used over the years. So let's get into exactly what is net worth. So you think of your assets, and the typical ones are your house or rental properties and hard things. Now, For younger people, I'll include things like the cars. I mean, for kids, I'll even include things like their video games or their stuffies, just to give them an idea of like, what are the things that are yours and what are those assets, and then putting some value to it, just so that they can start to understand what an asset is. So it's a thing that you could sell and get money for, essentially. Then you've got, I always separate the category of investments, because you want to see it really clearly on your net worth spreadsheet that you've got your assets and you've got your investments, and you want to break out your TFSA, your RSP, your LIRA, your pension plan, anything that you've invested in. Again, you can choose to put rental properties in the asset section or the investment section. I usually throw it in the asset section. We can argue about that. We can have a conversation. Why not? It's fun. So that's the first section, and that gets you kind of like, a lot of people pay a lot of attention to that and feel like that's what they're worth because they own all these things. So, you know, you own the $1 million house, but if you have an $800,000 mortgage on it, you only have $200,000. So that's the cash flow, savings, investings, but not getting too fixated on just the asset component, because the bigger picture for real wealth and real financial freedom is understanding, yeah, you might have the big, beautiful $1 million house, but if you're owing $800,000 on it, you're probably not sleeping that well at night. Nor, depending on your cash flow situation, is that really where you want to be. And again, depending on your age and the timing, but if you're 40 or 50, that's probably not, I wouldn't say that's a really healthy position to be in your home. So that's your assets and your investments. Beautiful number. Then you go to the next section, which is your liabilities. And this is the other one I really, the action item this week will be fun to talk about. So make sure you click on the link and get the PDF, or message me or comment and I'll send it over to you. But I really want you to understand what are your liabilities. So there's good debt and there's quote unquote bad debts. So the good debts are the mortgages. Those are things that you're paying, but they're to pay down the mortgage in a house. If it's a rental property, and we're going to talk about that in my next series, all about how really the rental property game can work and really work into your overall net worth beneficially. So mortgages, those are good debts because those are expenses and a liability that's actually going towards an improvement of your asset. So that is the good debts. Bad debts would be things like credit card, because you decided to, go in, you didn't have the money saved, you went and bought, in my case, if I would have gone and bought this new monitor I'm saving for on a credit card, then that would be bad debt, because that monitor is not really gonna make me money. It's not. It's completely just a fun thing. It's kind of just to make me feel good, and I'm all about emotional spending too, just as long as you're aware that that's what you're doing and you're paying for it. So having your good debts and your bad debts, but you have to count them all. So even if you've borrowed money from a friend, that counts as a debt. That counts towards, if you had to sell everything and pay everything off tomorrow, what is the end number? So it's really cool over time, and I'm pretty open about sharing my own personal story and my own financial. I like to talk about money. But one thing that I have found over time is that most of my assets actually almost earn me more than my income. So what's fascinating is over time, you really learn how to use money as a tool and have that money make you money, because you learn how to nurture it and love it and actually have it grow. So that is my sort of overview on net worth. It is honestly, if you can do it once a year, if you could start now through this time and at least get it into a spreadsheet, join me on June the 9th, and I'm going to take you through exactly how to fill it out and give you the tools, because I think it's so very critically important that people understand their net worth. And if you understand that and you pay more attention to your net worth, I really believe you'll see how the engine of money can grow and make your life happier and more sane and sleep better at night. And you see how it all works, so you can eventually get to more financial freedom and enjoy and love your money. So thank you very much for listening to this week's series episode on net worth. And next week, I'm going to bring it all together and look at the big picture and talking about money.